When you look at Burkina Faso and their head of state is standing up there in military uniform, that is very different from a president who's standing in a suit addressing a group of fellow heads of state. When a general stands up there, the messaging is entirely different. I know our president is a general, but when he stands up there in his uniform, he's representing the military might of his nation to make you leave by force if you don't want to. The democratic process and diplomacy isn't something that is going to happen as smoothly when you're dealing with a nation that is led by a military regime.
Hi guys, welcome to Kenganda. My name is Janita Maya and this is the Repat podcast. I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
Yeah, Master Gabs, back in the building. Happy to be here. Surrounded by all of this beauty.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Tina. Tina, happy to be here with all this beauty.
Okay, there's beauty in the studio today. So guys, we've seen that many West African countries, including Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, have been expressing a desire to reduce or end the influence of the former colonizers. What's the way forward, guys? What do you think about this?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks ago about a similar topic, yeah. And I feel like, you know, again, with respect to respecting a country's sovereignty and their right to choose who they allow to participate in certain aspects of their political, economical, social process, it is entirely up to them, and they are 100% welcome to be able to do that. I don't see that there's anything wrong with it. I wish more countries would strive for that type of independence, particularly when you're talking about the nation that was once upon a time your colonizer. I think that's a critical one, yeah? So what are they holding on to? What are the French holding on to in this particular case? What do the citizens of these countries have to benefit from ridding themselves of colonial influence and making sure that they do everything that they can to be independent, autonomous, and run their countries the way that they see fit? I'm here for it, and I'm looking forward to seeing more and understanding more as the days and weeks come.
Okay, thank you for that. Tina, what do you think?
I agree too. Yeah, no, I think it's important to free yourselves from the white man.
That's your cash, your punchline.
That's just freeing yourself from the white man. And obviously, like you said, Burkina Faso, right? It's a pretty powerful nation, like historically, and what they've done. So yeah, no, I think it's just about time. It's appropriate.
Yeah. We have our professor today in the background, Madame Rachel, please.
It's actually Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Yeah, and for me, I am all for that, honestly, because sometimes I even ask myself, did they even ever get independence if France is still there? Is it wrong to want freedom and to live in dignity in your own country? So let them get rid of them. It's been so many years of misery, so many years of oppression, so many years of exploitation, so many years of so many things. So they are tired and they want France out, and whoever France is allying with, excuse me, because it's not just France, but whoever it has alliance with. And because when you look at Burkina Faso, there's this one revolutionist, like I've always admired, Thomas Sankara, who was unfortunately killed in 1987 at the age of 37, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I don't have my history right. But yeah, he wanted economic growth in his country, in Burkina Faso, but his life was ended in just 4 years of him coming to power. And ever since then, you see a country like Burkina Faso that has uranium is poor. They struggle with electricity, and France gets 30% of that. But where is Burkina Faso right now? Where is Mali right now? Where is Niger right now? And the question goes to other African countries, like, what are we doing to help these countries? Like, are we siding with them? Are we helping them? I was seeing, I think, ECOWAS wanting, they put these embargoes on Niger, and then ever since the coup d'etat happened, and then they are now threatening, like, to fight them. You know, that Tinubu guy from Nigeria, their current president. So I'm like, you people are not learning from history. It's like we are still prisoners of history. Like, the tactics have always been divide and conquer. You know, it's not changing. So if ECOWAS, all African formation alliance for the Western countries, is threatening Niger when it should have been helping it, where does that leave ECOWAS, and where does that leave Niger, and where does that leave Africa as a whole? You know, because France is trying to fight for its interest to stay in Niger, and what's its interest? More exploitation. Because they are threatened that if Niger is pulling away, if Mali is pulling away, if Burkina Faso is pulling away, it's going to leave them hanging in so many ways. It's going to kind of corrupt their economic growth. So what they want to get rid of themselves of France is a cry for freedom. And we've seen this happen before. It's not the first time it's happening. So I am all for Mali. I am all for Niger. I am all for Burkina Faso.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Professor.
For that informed...
I almost said her government name. Let me reserve it. Thank you so much for that. I too am all for them trying to get rid of what France is doing in their country and whatnot, them taking back that power and that freedom and saying, you know what, I work with the white man, and, you know, like, more of what the black person represents or what they stand for, their cultural values, their normal values and whatnot. But I just want to ask an open-ended question. We've seen countries that get rid of the, I can't say colonizers, but countries that try to get rid of Western influence crumble in the end. Does that make sense? When you look at Libya, right? They did get rid of Gaddafi, and now look at them right now.
But I think that was the whole problem, though, wasn't it?
And who was behind helping get rid of Gaddafi in the first place?
Is that controversial? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If the West, what's that word? If the West, oh my God, where did the word go? So if they set it up, essentially, right, then of course you're going to crumble, because I feel like they do it so you do crumble.
Yeah.
Like, it was even the same with Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and the thing is, it's okay, yes, there could be a dictator, and okay, you're going to take the dictator away, but what do you have in place for these people after you remove the dictator? You know, and there's this thing with the West of, like, acting somewhat like morally superior. So if they decide that this person's a dictator, then they have to go. But then there are many dictators which they don't take away from you, who they actually help stay in their positions because they help them continue to be who they are. Yeah. So it's always, if the West is involved, it's a mess.
Yeah.
If you do it yourselves, like liberating yourselves with what they're trying to do, if this is them genuinely, then I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think I've seen a concern on the internet where people are saying, okay, fine, the coups have, started and whatnot. They've happened. They're getting rid of all these people. But, like, what are they going to do? Is it giving up one colonizer to take on the next colonizer? Because, like, you're getting rid of France, right? But then you're going with Russia. It's like you're giving up one white man's influence for another white man's influence. It's just like, what's the way forward? Like, where are we going with this? Because I thought in general, the end was that, you know what, we stop having these people's influence in our countries, right? Get rid of them, get rid of everything they stand for. And then a few weeks later, you're out there, you know, having tea with your competitor, with your colonizer's competitor and whatnot.
But is Russia the same as the West, though?
Are they not white?
I mean,
They are, but they're more like grimy.
for me,
like-
they are the same. And my fear is like, where does this leave Africa if we are trying to jump from one? It's like jumping from toxic relationship into the next. Because again, at the same end of the day, they still hold the agendas. They still hold the power. Like, I think who said, Thomas Sankara, like, he who feeds you holds the power. So when, I think the new kid on the block, or the new alliance on the block, is Russia, but rather the BRICS. There's Brazil, there's Russia, there's China, you know. So it's for them. They're doing this for them mainly. They're not doing it for Africa because they have interest. Like they love Africa so much, or it's going to benefit Africa so much and all that. At the end of the day, it's for them. And then my fear comes in when we now want to join forces as Africa as a whole. And then we are trying to get away from all these alliances we've put ourselves into. Then Russia is going to get with China or whoever. That's my theory. And then they're going to join alliances, much as it might seem they are kind of trying to form separate alliances as Russia, as Europe, as America. But then now it's like a joint force because we are fighting to still stay in Africa because we still have interest there. So none of these alliances are not are helpful us or are benefiting us as long as they are still outside forces. It has to be authentically African. You know, it could be maybe with people in the diaspora because at the end of the day they are still African. They still have roots in Africa and everything. But if it's Russia, if it's China and everything. I mean, we have Chinese here. We see how they are operating, how they are running, and it's not for our benefit. At the end of the day, it's for them. So for me, it's there's no difference with Russia or China. All those relationships are fake.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree 100%. None of these, let's call them world superpowers, are doing this as a charitable, feel-good thing. I think what the Russians are smartly doing is they're positioning themselves to be the better alternative to what is currently going on. So when we see the Western world, and since Russia is pretty much in the Far East, we can't classify them as the Western world, right? When we see the Western nations and the impact of what having relationships with them does to make particularly these sovereign African nations feel like they're compromising their values, they're compromising their principles in order to be able to cater to the wants and needs of these donor countries that are giving us this support and that support. And we would rather do without that kind of support than compromise our values. We talk about the whole LGBTQ thing a lot over the last recent history as just one example of how Western influence and the African ideals that we see being held so near and dear to these nations are not matching up. And so the World Bank is pulling out of offering funding to Uganda. And so many of these alliances, particularly with the United States, have been compromised because the Africans are standing firm in their position to do what we feel, what these different nations feel is right for us, for the people. And so I think the Russians are very smartly positioning themselves to say, hey, we're not trying to tell you what to do. We're not trying to take anything away from you. In fact, we have so much money, we have so much resources. Let's just give in the name of friendship. Let's give in the name of partnership. Now, everybody should know full well that later on down the line, they will have to pay the piper. There will be a moment where Russia extracts the value that they've been looking for. Same way that we're looking now with the funding that the Asians have been so generously giving over the last decade and a half to build infrastructure, which they are largely benefiting from in evacuating the benefit of having access to our natural resources here. So I see, since Africa is the world's great final frontier in terms of not only natural resources, but human capital as well, cheap labor as well. A lot of these countries are looking at Africa as an area of opportunity. And so, yeah, you're right to be wary of the Russians' intentions. But they're also very savvy and smart in the way that they're positioning themselves right now as the better alternative to what's currently available. And again, I agree with you all 100% in that it's up to our leaders and our nations as African nations to find that way of having to be free of any need from any foreign sponsor, supporter, partner, donor, whatever the language that you may want to use is. I think if we have it within our capacity to do so, we need to do that. And, you know, we keep having these conversations about the how and the when of it all, but the message is always going to be consistently that we as African nations need to be independent and free from the need to rely upon support from others. If we want to continue to proclaim that we deserve the freedom to choose and define our societies and cultures and define our policies and run and govern our nations the way that we see fit, we also need to equally be as forceful in our need to be economically independent. And I think that's a huge thing that will make all of this make sense if it can come to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think all African countries should do what the West is what most West African countries are doing, like getting rid of like I can't say colonizers, but like getting rid of like Western influence,
The Francophone countries.
Yeah. Do you think most African countries should like follow suit and do the same thing?
Well, I don't know that you can use a blanket approach and make it applicable to every country, because some of these countries are run by military regimes.
Yeah.
Some of these are democratic countries with, you know, democratically elected governments, and that dynamic by itself makes the way that the country is governed have to. It's entirely different. It's comparing apples to oranges. So when you look at Burkina Faso and their head of state is standing up there in military uniform,
Yeah.
that is very different from a president who's standing in a suit, you know, addressing addressing a group of fellow heads of state. When a general stands up there, the messaging is entirely different. I know our president is a general, but when he stands up there in his uniform, he's representing the military might of his nation to make you leave by force if you don't want to. The democratic process and diplomacy isn't something that is going to happen as smoothly when you're dealing with a nation that is led by a military regime. That's how I look at that. Yeah.
Would you do you think, Richard, do you have something?
Yeah, I also want to say that as much as we are having all these political changes and everything, as Africa, in different countries where it's happening, from change of governments and all, but if there's no genuine economic change or growth, we are wasting time. You can change all the presidents you want, you can have all the coup d'etats you can, but if there's no economic growth, it's nothing. I think it's in Africa where we have like GDPs that show growth and everything, but the reality is shocking. And then you're like, what's happening? So for me, what's the change? Like what are we looking to change? We are getting into these alliances. Yes, we want economic change and everything, but we can't do it genuinely within Africa as Africans, and the roots that are spread all over the world that are African. Yeah.
You know what? I think one I feel like I think I know what Oshe would say, but don't quote me on that. He would say the diaspora has to come in and do something for its people. Because I'm sure there's so many West Africans that are in the diaspora. Of course, there are many, but like people from Burkina Faso or Niger or Mali or something like that. Maybe if they could, I don't know, form an alliance and pour into their country a bit more, and then maybe they wouldn't have to keep looking outside for all this aid and whatnot.
You know what's funny? It's like even when people do try to do those things, the powers that may be don't allow for that. So like for like communities to come together, and so it can be something as simple as building a school, giving healthcare, like small things. Like if the powers that be don't want you to do it, then you won't be able to do it. They'll block you at every point. And it's a way of like, if the people see that they can do it for themselves, then why do they need us? So there's a lot of blocking. So sometimes I'm in the space where I feel like some of these conversations are so redundant because it's like, we ain't gonna change nothing. Like conversating isn't even a word, but like having conversations, right? We're not really gonna change much because there are people who make decisions and what they say goes, essentially.
Yeah.
So we can have our viewpoints, but what does it really change?
I think we do kind of
in this Africa.
Yeah, because if it starts with ideas, and then from the ideas, it's then the laying strategies and everything. So we might not be the ones to do, whatever we have to do, but we might be the ones to talk about these issues to reach maybe the future generation So these conversations are much needed.
Yeah, definitely for future generations. Yeah,
it's like plant the seed at least and let it grow and germinate. So what would be the way forward? So like the you mentioned about giving up the need to have aid. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal scenario, all of our nations would be so active in pursuing programs and initiatives that make our countries economically independent so that we don't have to rely upon, donor funding or these relationships with these Western nations that continue to be, labeled as advantageous to them, but not advantageous to our countries. So I think we should look inward again. And this is, again, a recurring theme. We should always look inward for the solution as opposed to looking outward for somebody who's going to provide the solution, but is going to come with interest. Yeah.
Tina, what do you think is the way forward in this?
Like he said, looking inward, looking forward. But then maybe I'm just like too defeated. I'm just at this point where it's like, because even when you talk about like us doing things for ourselves, even our leaders that have tried to do that have then been plucked away by the West, right? Because for them, it's the thing of anyone who's ever been about Pan-Africanism, African like unity and like Africa operating on its own, all those leaders have somehow disappeared or been villainized, or like even when you look at someone like, might be a bit controversial, but even when you look at someone like Idi Amin, right, through all his atrocities, like what he did to like liberate us as a people, what he tried to do. And when growing up, when I would hear about him, he's like this big monster, right? But then when you do your own research and you really look into what he did, you're like, he did a lot for this country, So like things like that, it's like we can try, but I think it's definitely like what Rachel said, it's a generational thing. There's a certain generation that is so tied to the West and everything is just so intertwined that maybe when those people have, gone out, and maybe not even our generation, I think the one after us is the one that's actually going to make change, because they really don't play. Even like now at their age, they don't think the way that we think. They're not as compromising the way we are. They're more like independent thinking, and it's about what they think and what they want. So I think that generation will definitely do something. But for right now, I think it's about educating that generation and pouring that sort of knowledge into them so that they know that they can do it, and also so that they know that that's expected of them. So yeah.
Okay, Rachel.
I definitely agree. Like Agaba said, getting rid of foreign aid and everything, because guys, these are Trojan horses. We might not see it right now, it's all praises and everything, but we are going to find out sooner or later what is happening. And these things have happened before. You know, it's not new. It's just that now we see it a lot. It's in our faces. It's streamlined on so many news channels and everything. So, I mean, and we are educated. The literacy rate is far different from how it was 60 years ago in Africa and all that. And like Tina said, I agree with her, education. Like, let it start from home. It starts from us being proud of who we are, embracing, small things as, I am a black, dark-skinned, beautiful girl. I can wear my natural hair, and I don't care what you tell me about it. That's it. And I am not going to support your Brazilian wigs and everything, But also wanting what's best. Don't we want to be recognized globally as a powerful race? Why can't we all work together? Why?
Like, crazy how we're quick to join other people but not each other.
Producing that is authentic, huh?
All this,
yeah. So it starts with being accountable as an individual, then holding other people accountable as well. The leaders from all levels, as local level and other levels, and like I said, it's a generational thing. So impart those ideas in the children as early as they are born, as early as they are born. But yeah, let's all work together, guys. Yeah. Let's all work together. This can't be achieved by one person, by just getting under talking about it, by us fighting in the comments, because some of you are
horrible.
Very.
You're horrible in the comment section. Horrible.
Yeah, very horrible.
Rachel, speaking of Ati, you have to teach them when they're just young. Imagine a Pan-African baby. Like a tiny baby with
a little pro-black baby. Love it.
Imagine. That would be nice.
But I feel like these kids are like that though.
But I feel like it's the fire you have when you're young. The ideas I had when I was young, I believed I could do anything. But now I'm just like, let me do what I can and go to bed.
Just do what I can.
Between the Repat podcasts and the Pan-African dating show, Kangana is changing the world.
Yeah,
it's changing the world.
I did want to mention recently this particular topic was brought up in the group. By the way, guys, we do have a WhatsApp group for our viewers. So if you want to join, just head to the description box and tap the link. And they were talking about what is happening in Burkina Faso. It's like, all the other African countries need to open their eyes and see what's going on. And then I happened to comment. I said, but do they have to do that with the coups? Because like, guys, when you hear like there's a government change and whatnot, there are people who died for that. It didn't just happen. They didn't just go on TV and announce the new president. No, people actually died in the streets or something like that. Yeah. Because when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So like, it's not kumbaya. They're not saying, oh, you guys give up, change the government. And then someone was saying, oh, it's okay for you to get to where you're going. There have to be some sacrifices made. It makes sense in a word, but you're in the comfort of your home. You're not affected by anything. You're not affected by the coups. You have amazing security. You don't know what's happening to people on ground in those African countries. You don't know the instability they're facing, the insecurity, the everything. Imagine being on tension in your own country. My father happened to be alive during the war in Uganda. And when I hear his stories, I'm just like, that was such a horrible life. Like imagine living your life on tension, hiding with the insecurity and whatnot. Now the coups, they're happening. Of course, we have to accept the world for what it is. But in an ideal world, like Gabs was saying, I would love for this coup to happen, because I know for sure there are people who are suffering. There are kids who are now orphans. There are widows. Like, you are just creating a whole generation of like people who are without their loved ones,
Yeah.
But that's been African politics from the jump though, hasn't it? It's always been somebody has to die for it. And I remember when I was young, I remember saying that, and then my dad was like, yeah, when there's a change of president, like people have to die.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what?
There's no change that's comfortable.
Okay. Rachel, please, people are dying. Kids are dying in Africa.
I know, Johnita, but there's no change that's comfortable. There's no change that's comfortable.
Nice.
it's someone is going to lose their life,
But why are we okay with the notion that someone has to die for something?
It's not being okay with the notion, and it saddens me every time I have to open my phone and I am reading about maybe a riot happening or something happening and people are dying here or wherever. Like, it really saddens me, but if we want change, it's not going to be comfortable. We have to accept that.
That's
it's
why
not
some
going
places
to come
will
and
never
just sweep
change.
like a peaceful wind, because even when there's a storm, not a storm. Even as an individual, when you're going through these transitions through life, it's not going to be comfortable. Sometimes you're going to go through the deepest pain for you to become the best of something. So, yeah.
Well, we'll see. I wanted to bring us back to the point. When Idi Amin sent the Indians away, and then Uganda took like a whole economic depression after that because they put people in charge who are not qualified to be in charge. Sometimes you have to leave these things of rest aside. I know that's a bit controversial. Okay, leave the whole.
Did we really go through that?
No. I'm just saying. Yeah.
According to?
No, the it's there.
According to who?
I don't know. On the
Who
internet?
gave us that history? Who told us the story?
I don't know.
Who told us the story? White people told us the story.
What I'm trying to...
The same people that said he was a cannibal, the same people that said
you
he
love
was...
Idi Amin. Look at her.
Loki.
Guys, this is an Idi Amin stan.
Don't say that, because hell of my neighbors are Asian and I don't want problems, okay? But and don't get me wrong, I don't agree with the inhumane aspect of anything, but then I also think the information that we were given, a lot of the things that he was blamed for, he wasn't necessarily responsible for. I think there was a lot of that because he was very straight about, I am about my people. I don't care about you. And we need that from our presidents, because a lot of our presidents nowadays are playing geopolitics. They're playing mind games, acting like they're acting in the best interest of us, when really they're just a pawn for the West.
Yeah.
So
the point I was driving at was, I feel like preparation, like you said, educating people and putting the right people in charge. You have to educate them. You have to teach them. You have to let them unlearn certain things and then relearn and overlearn, underlearn, whatever. They have to learn certain things for them to be able to move the country forward. It's like at the end of the day, it's all about education. I was just supporting your point. I was just trying to bring it in that way, but I took the wrong path.
Maybe we should have,
No. I took a wrong path there. But my point was education is important because you can do all this. When you put the wrong people in charge after the change of government, nothing is going to change, like we've been saying. So educating the masses or educating the people, educating the youth, so that by the time it's that time to take charge and take over, they know what they're doing. Have you ever been led by someone who doesn't know what they're doing? It's just a hit or miss. You're just
winging it.
It may happen, but yeah, guys. Any other thing before we close this one out?
I'm watching. Going to pay close attention to this one. Just African geopolitics in general. Something that I'm just continuing to be more interested in. I'll admit, I've hated conversations about politics in general, but as it pertains to the future of this continent, where my kids are going to grow and thrive, and my future generations, who I strive to create generational wealth for, are going to live, I definitely am interested in some how some of these things are playing out. So yeah, I'm just gonna be a cautious and interested observer. See how it all works out.
Yeah.
Tina?
I just want to say, before anyone tries to come for me, I'm not an Idi Amin stan. I know not everything was perfect, but I just want us to have leaders that care about us that much again. And that care about us as like a people. Like, I want us to have people that, like, for example, for example, I'm not going to pretend to understand like all the politics in Rwanda, right? But I do appreciate how he loves that country, right? And you can see it and how it's growing and coming out and all of those things. But that doesn't take away from anything that anyone is saying they're experiencing that isn't good. But I just mean, I want more leaders like that who love where they're from and who love Africa in general. If we have that, be unbeatable. Like that pride that Americans have, and that arrogance, that like pride in like who they are, I want us to have that again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just that.
Yeah. Rachel, do you have any last remarks for us?
I just want to say decolonize in every sense. Just decolonize. It might be something small, just decolonize. And I mean, we want to see an Africa where, like I said, globally recognized as a powerful race. You know, because we have so much that can make us get there. Be patriotic, be proud of who you are, and then at the end of the day, decolonize.
I love that. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we all need love.
Oh, we do.
I'm saying at the end of the day, you all need to look out for one another. You need to love your neighbor. You need to look out for your person. You know, you need to look out for the people around you. You need to love on each other and protect each other. And then, because it's from love that you guys are going to like come together and work together and then move forward without killing each other. Yeah, guys, so the people they can find you.
Master Gabs at Master Gabs on all of the social platforms that matter, and check out the Allergic to Average podcast on YouTube. Some good stuff on there.
Teenagram, TEENAH gram on Instagram, and that's it.
Well, Risha doesn't want to be found. We are missing the boss man himself, but he's out there doing amazing work in Kenya. They're actually shooting a podcast as we're shooting a podcast in Uganda. So it's just like double trouble on both in both countries. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. And you can send us an email at teamkenganda@gmail.com. Follow us on all our social media pages at Kenganda Nation. Subscribe to the Pan African Dating Show. We'll see you guys next time.